Hi everybody, and welcome to this episode of Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest is Gillian Phillip. I met Gillian a year ago. I already knew her story, but I met her a year ago. We were speaking on the same platform at the Battle of Ideas, and she told her story, went into detail. And it's one of those stories where you think to yourself, I never would have believed this a few years ago, 10 years ago. These were the stories we heard about Soviet Russia and Maoist China and North Korea. And we would laugh at those countries and go, what a basket case they are. And now it's here. It really is a sad state of affairs. So before we go any further, let me tell you a bit more about Gillian. She was a children's author with over 40 children's books to her name. And then the cancel culture mob came for her, just like me, in the same month as me, June 2020. And like me, they were successful. So we're going to get into that in a minute. So first of all, allow me to welcome Gillian to the show. Thank you, Gillian, for coming along.
Hi, thank you, Nick, for having me. It's great to be here.
Can you believe it's been 13 months since we was on stage together?
And I know, well, the Battle of Ideas came up again on Twitter the other day, and I thought, is already? Is that come around again already? Oh my goodness, yeah. Because I was doing something else, but I would have loved to be there. But it was just like, oh my goodness, it can't have been an entire year, but it has. It's incredible.
It has. It's been nearly 13 months since we were there. I wanted to go again this year, but like you, it just trying to find a time, a whole weekends, the expense, and I couldn't go this time. I'm hoping to go again next year. So for people who don't know you and don't know your story, and that they should know it because it got into the press and everything, recap what happened to you.
Right. So, well, I worked for what's called a book packager. I wrote children's novels, which they kind of, what they do is they plan it, they create the characters, they create the worlds, and they create the plot, and then they put it out to a writer to write the whole thing. Now, I was one of a team called the Erin Hunters, who wrote animal fantasy for this company. And Erin Hunter, who doesn't actually exist, but is several authors, wrote books about cats, dogs, African wild animals, and I was one of them. I was one of them writing Brave Lands and Survivors. Now, I'd done that since about 2011. I was really good at my job. I was popular as a writer. I was also the face of Erin Hunter on tour in the States. So I would go out to the States once or twice a year and promote the books. And that was pretty successful as well. So the company never had any problem with me, right?
And this was a full-time position.
This was pretty much full-time. This is what I did as a writer, like especially in the last few years. It was basically my main and only writing job. So anyway, they also knew my views, by the way, about everything, because they all followed me on Twitter, right? So bear that in mind when I tell you what happened, because in 2020, you'll remember as well, Nick, first of all, well, there was the whole fuss when JK Rowling kind of came out. She tweeted something, pretty sensible. It was just a rational tweet. It wasn't hateful or anything, and it was just saying, dress however you like, sleep with whoever you like, but don't throw people out of a job for knowing what a woman is. Certainly, that's the paraphrase. And I had to come out in support of that, but actually I'd supported gender critical issues, as we call them, for at least a couple of years before then, at least a couple of years. And a friend of mine called Rachel Rooney, who's also a children's writer, she had written this absolutely beautiful, kind of heartwarming picture book called My Body Is Me, which was intended to encourage children of all kinds to appreciate the bodies they were born in, to know how important they were, and that they were their body, and they should look after it, they should appreciate it, and be proud of it. For this appalling crime, she was monstered, not by an online mob, okay, not by anonymous trolls, by a particularly nasty clique of children's writers who have kind of set themselves up as the morality police of children's publishing. She was so upset by this, she was basically driven out of children's publishing. Now, when that happened, I tweeted in support of her. I said I was shocked at the behaviour of these writers and publishing people. And then it went quiet. And then I tweeted in support of JK Rowling. I added the hashtag I stand with JK Rowling. Again, quiet for a couple of weeks, but that was the blood in the water. And 25th of June, I woke up to a couple of hostile tweets, blocked, moved on, as you do, and then it snowballed. And for 24 hours, I was the target of an online mob. Rape threats, death threats, you name it. It was constant. It was Twitter restricted my account at one point because I was getting so many notifications. And got to sleep about 5 in the morning because it was a pretty horrible experience, you know, as you'll know, Nick. Was woken up at 9 again by my agent on the phone because, of course, a lot of these anonymous trolls had contacted A, the packager that I worked for, and B, the publisher who published the Aaron Hunter books. And they were demanding I be fired. And working partners said, well, consult with HarperCollins. And at 2 p.m. UK time, which was 9 a.m. New York time, HarperCollins office opened and I was fired on the spot. Absolutely on the spot. So no kind of, they didn't contact me to say, you know, what's your side of the story, what happened, explain yourself, none of that. I was out.
That sounds to me as if that decision had already been made. They were just waiting for the New York office to open, but that decision had already been made.
I think it was a pretty foregone conclusion among many of them, put it that way. Yes, it was HarperCollins who gave the final order, but you know, I mean, I knew these people personally. You know, I met them socially. I'd worked for them for years. I'd considered most of them my personal friends. So I didn't expect to be let down and betrayed to that extent. Yeah.
I have a theory why they went for you and why they go for JK Rowling so hard and so nastily. And it's because they always thought you was on their side. If you'd have been a conservative voting, you know, right winger, they expect that from you, and they expect it from JK Rowling. They would expect that, but because, let's go back to JK Rowling, because she's always been a feminist, a left winger, always on their side. It's a bit like in a Muslim religion. When you leave the religion, it's then death to you. If you're not in our group, then you're going to be in no one's group because they feel let down. That's why they go after you so hard.
A sort of apostasy. Yes, it's sort of apostasy. Yes. And I mean, to be honest, I mean, I wasn't particularly left wing. If anything, I'm a centrist, veering right sometimes, left sometimes on other issues. I've never been kind of can I use the word non-binary?
Well, the fact you've used that phrase now will push this video up the ratings in YouTube. The algorithm will go, this is the sort of thing we want to push, non-binary.
Non-binary, oh my God. So definitely on the politics thing, I voted along issues, not by party. And, you know, I didn't pretend to be a left winger, but I do have liberal values. I was, you know, I never called myself a feminist. I realize now that I am, and I don't half appreciate the sisterhood of feminists who kind of gathered around me and supported me.
You'll also find that everybody who went for you is also a feminist.
Oh, yes. Well, the liberal feminists, they call themselves. That's right.
So yeah, I can't stand the word feminist or feminism because A, it doesn't exist. It's never existed. It's part of the woke agenda and always has been, and it's a power grab. It's a bit like Black Lives Matter. How can you disagree with the term Black Lives Matter? How can you disagree with the term feminist and feminism? Because we've been told for 100 years it's all about equality. Feminism has got nothing to do with equality, but that's my 2 pence worth thrown in there.
You know, I disagree with you on that one, Nick, which is fine, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to disagree about things and be able to talk about them. You know, as far as I'm concerned, feminism is just kind of giving the same opportunities, equality of opportunity, not of outcome. You know, for women, and you know, and dealing with the kind of, I mean, one of the big things about gender critical feminism and the fact that we want to maintain women only spaces is the fact that women have always been under threat. If that women have not got a space for themselves to be with other women where men do not come in. So not just toilets, which is the sort of headline issue. They'll go, oh, we just want to pee. No, it's not just to do with that. Apart from anything, women should have privacy and dignity and safety when they're peeing. But there's also things like domestic refuges, prisons, and these are places that should be single sex, because women are in danger if there's a male-bodied person in that space. And I think a lot of also what has not been appreciated by, it's starting to get out now more to the general public and electorate. But for a long time, people assumed that what we were talking about was Haley Cropper out of Coronation Street. You know, some bloke that had the operation and was very gentle and, you know, just wanted to live his life in peace. And that's really not what we're talking about. You know, with a lot of these, now that Stonewall has expanded the trans umbrella to mean almost literally anything, it can be a fully male-bodied person, no hormones, no surgery, and just saying, I identify as a woman.
Yeah, I could say that now. I could tell you now, I'm a woman interviewing you.
Yeah, you could,
Oh,
yes.
no, wait a minute, wait. No, I'm a man again now. No, wait. Oh, I'm now non-binary. I'm a they. No, wait. I'm back to a man. There we go.
Now, wait a minute, Nick. You can't possibly be trans because you haven't got painted fingernails and long hair.
I haven't got any hair.
Look at my hair.
I get what you mean about Haley Cropper, because that's what we always thought. And that's called gender dysphoria. That's when someone has a recognised mental health condition where they don't feel at home in their own body and they need help and support. And I'm fully on board for help and supporting people who are suffering inside. But what we're talking about now when you say the word trans is we're talking about activists. We're talking about nutcases who want to be, who think they're part wolf, or they want, you know, it's gone into make believe now. And what they've done is they've damaged even more the people with gender dysphoria, because now they're being victimized, being picked on, where that's a registered medical condition, and we need to help people with gender dysphoria, just like we help people with anorexia and bulimia and lots of other mental health conditions. We don't penalize them, but these people have jumped on the bandwagon of that and are now damaging the people they say they were trying to help.
That's just it. I mean, they are damaging the cause of genuinely trans people who have just tried to live in peace for decades. And with this kind of new militant extreme form of trans ideology that brings in everyone from cross-dressers to, I don't know, girls with short hair, a man who likes to wear a wig on the weekend. All this is under the trans umbrella. And it is genuinely damaging, because there is such thing as gender dysphoria, and people need help, they need therapy, they need advice, but they also, I mean, in extremis, they might want to try as hard as best they can to become as close as they can get to what their image is of the opposite sex. It doesn't make them the opposite sex, and that's another thing that's kind of, I mean, the trans people I know, they know they're not operating under any delusion that they have turned into the opposite sex. They know their biological sex has remained and will remain forever. And they say, I have gender dysphoria about that. But now we're being expected to say trans women are women, trans men are men, and mean it literally. It's not, a lot of people started to say it because they thought it was the polite thing to say, you know, it's accepting. But that's not what the phrase is for. phrase is meant literally, that you have to literally believe that.
No, they mean it literally, because look at almost every Labour politician who will not say that men don't have cervixes. And
Yeah,
they won't say it. And it's like,
no,
and it's like, this is clown. This is mental. This is a contagion. This is Soviet Russia, where you knew what the truth was, but you wouldn't say it because you wanted to be politically correct. Because if you weren't politically correct, you went to the gulag. And this is the authoritarianism we have now, where incredibly intelligent people like Sir Keir Starmer, who don't agree with his politics, but he's obviously a very intelligent man to get to where he's got, won't say the truth because he's terrified of the people behind him.
yes, and he's terrified of the activists who have basically told him, this is what you say about this issue, and they haven't listened. They haven't listened to the opposite side because they were told not to. And Stonewall always said there's to be no debate about this. I mean, what? There's to be no debate about changing the meaning of a very specific category of person, man and woman, and changing that in law to make it a nebulous thing. You cannot form laws around nebulous concepts of, oh, I've got long hair, so I'm a girl. Oh, I like to keep my nails short, so I'm a bloke. It's how this ever got this far is because of the whole kind of, there can be no debate about it. No, it's trans men are men, trans women are women, and that is the be all and all of it. And there should have been a debate from the outset, but they were very careful to make sure there wasn't a debate because they know.
They knew.
It is ridiculous.
They knew. And that's how we've ended up with these hate crime laws, because they're nebulous. It's if someone perceives you being hateful, that's illegal. Well, who defines what hate is? It doesn't even have to be the person you're speaking to. It can be someone walking past who overhears the conversation and they can report it as a hate crime. It can be somebody that person then tells when they get home and they think it's a hate crime. And it's like, this is just mental.
And then suddenly you got the police at your door. I mean, I may be wrong because I am not hot on the law, but I thought the concept of hate crime was the fact that it had to be a crime first. So, like, if someone was attacked and physically assaulted, and then there could be an exacerbating factor in that they were attacked because of their sex or their presentation or their skin color, and that made the crime a hate crime. Okay, you can see that, but then it turned into something where it's simple hate or just offense or being rude about someone is a crime. No, it's not. Do you remember that photo, that famous photo on Twitter? It was a year or two ago, and it was a police force. Was it Merseyside?
It was Liverpool police. They had a big vehicle on the side of the vehicle said, "Causing offence is an offence."
Is an offence.
No,
and
it's
it was
not.
just, yeah, that's right. And they had to delete because everybody was on them going, no, it's not. It's not an offence. And the fact that a police force was posting this, it was like, what? Don't the police know what the law is? You know? And that's how they.
I think the police have got involved in all this now for one simple reason, that crime is so low now. There's no burglaries, there's no rapes, there's no assaults, there's no drug dealing. Crime is so low. I think the police are worried about being made redundant. So they're looking for other things they can do because crime's almost at zero now.
Yeah. You never hear of anything like that, do you? It's like never hear of burglaries. No.
I used to work for the police. I was not a police officer, but I've trained police officers. I've been based in police stations for years. I know how the police work. Not like it is now. We're talking about 15 years ago. So I'm a big supporter of the police, and watching them go down the drain the way they are breaks my heart, because I tell you what, the people are losing faith in the police, and if we lose faith in the police, the only people that benefit are called criminals.
Yeah, I think I think that's true, and people are losing faith in the police. And when somebody thinks, well, there's no point me calling the police because they're not going to do anything about it, they're too busy hassling some woman on Twitter because she misgendered some hulking guy in a wig. You know, it's not good for anyone. It's not good for the police. It's not good for society. It's yeah, and they are of course supposed to police, as you know, without fear or favor, and an awful lot of policing with favor. I'm afraid, and they,
In favour was happening when I was working with the police. I look back now and I could see it all the time there. We had an issue with lewd acts in Manchester City Centre in the gay village, this underground canal path where men would meet up and have sex with each other, which is illegal because it's outside. We would have reports of families on canal boats going past and phoning the police going, I'm just watching 8 men have sex with each other. My daughter wants to know what's going on. So we tried to do something about it. And first of all, we got told, you can't do anything about it because they're a protected minority. I mean, this isn't the gay community. This is a tiny, tiny fraction of perverts who just happen to be gay. So we spent a year consulting with the gay community in Manchester before we did any enforcement. And the week before we commenced enforcement, it got decided we'll drop the whole thing because we're scared of what the press will say. So we dropped it all.
right,
And that was
right.
15 years ago. So it was already happening then.
Right, you're right. Yes, imagine. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I know a lot of gay people who won't go to pride parades now because pride there's it's an awful lot of not pride so much as just pure.
It's king and it's pervertedness and having got. I mean, let's be honest. I don't care what people do in the privacy of their own bedroom.
Well, that's
Some
it.
of the things I've done in my bedroom, some people would find offensive, but it's in my bedroom, so do what you want. What we don't want is taking it onto the public streets where we have kids walking around and people and the parents are taking their children. Look at the men dressed like dogs with the cheeks of their asses hanging out. Isn't that wonderful? Well, no, it's not wonderful. You should be experiencing that at 7 years old.
Yeah, well, exactly. And like, and sometimes you'll say, oh, well, people shouldn't bring their kids to pride parades, but they've been encouraged to
They're
treat pride
invited.
parades as family affairs
Yes,
and
they're
stuff.
invited to go.
And besides, kids and their parents are out around town all the time, and it's like it. And I don't. I think it's time for a return of kink shaming. It's kind of, you know, I thought the whole point of a kink was that like you got the thrill of doing something sort of slightly illegitimate or scandalous, you know. And now like how does that work then? Because if it's all over the public streets, how is it?
The part of that kink then will be 10,000 people are looking at me.
Making yes,
That's turning me on now.
Forcing people to watch them, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I'm actually in favour of the return of kink shaming. I mean, it's like
we need to return to a lot more traditional values where we have shame in society. Shame used to make most people behave themselves in many, many ways, but we don't have shame anymore now. It's actually now a negative to shame somebody. That's why society is becoming dysfunctional, because it's now, we're told now, your lifestyle is as equally valuable as anybody else's lifestyle. And we know that's not true, but we're told it is true. And it's breaking down some of the barriers. And what tradition and social values really are, they're solutions to problems we forgot we had. And now we're taking those traditions and social values away. The problems are all coming back that we thought we'd solved.
Right. I mean, I can understand that, you know, people shouldn't have been shamed for example, being gay. People shouldn't be shamed for loads of things. But there comes a point where, yeah, you should be embarrassed to go out with a plastic penis hanging out of your costume. That it's the difference between kind of not shaming people for just being their natural selves, their natural.
What you're trying to do now is you're trying not to be nebulous, and what happens is everyone has a different opinion of what we should shame and what we shouldn't shame, and we go back to the same thing: who defines when we should shame people? And it's really, really difficult because it's a sliding scale depending who you are, where you live, your experiences, and this is all very difficult. Humans are very complicated creatures.
Yes. Oh, that's that one we can definitely agree on. Yeah, they are. Yeah, and something that would be shameful in one country, for example, is not shameful in another country. No. So yeah, that's yes. Bloody humans, why are we so complicated?
But we are. Right, let's move on. I've got another question for you. So, after what happened to you, which was horrendous because I went through something similar, at the end of it, like me, you decide to yourself, I need to move on. I've got to find something else to do. I've got bills to pay. It was like me, your career went. Um, you then found something else to do. Can you tell me about that? Because this is the bit I'm really, really interested in.
Right. Well, I was desperately trying to think of something I could do. What I knew I didn't want to do, because that was the summer of lockdown, the first lockdown, remember? And I'm lucky enough to have space around me. I've got a garden, and I'd been spending my time in lockdown out in that garden, just manually working, just because chopping trees and God knows what, cutting grass. And I knew as soon as everything happened to me that I could not bear to be in an office. I couldn't bear to be. I just knew I had to be out of doors, because I knew being out of doors helped me, manual work helped me. So I thought, what can I do? What can I do? And particularly at that time, because it was lockdown, one of the opportunities that was going was driving, because people needed things delivered. And a friend of mine said something like, you could learn to drive an HGV and you could transport horses and stuff like that. And I said, yeah, I can actually just learn to drive an HGV, and I could just be an HGV driver. And we were like, yep. And she was like, yeah, I can see that suiting you. So that's what I did. I instantly Googled HGV training. And that's what I did. I signed up for HGV driver training. I did my certificate of professional competence, which just basically involves sitting for 35 hours, watching absolutely horrific videos. Not just that, but learning how to load and all this sort of technical stuff and physics and things. But a lot of it was watching horrendous videos, which is supposed to teach you, don't even glance at your mobile phone, because this is what happens. And it's quite impactful. And yeah, so I did that. And then I went for a week's training, didn't pass that time. And of course, it was hard to get the tests and the training because it was locked. So after a couple of months, I got another training week, another test, and one hiccup in that one, failed, and then a couple of weeks later I passed. So that's what I do now. I've become an HGV driver. I don't do it all the time. I do also do just small deliveries and vans and things some of the time, but I've got my HGV license and I absolutely love it. It's being outdoors. It's using my brain in a different way. I have to focus really. You have to be aware and focusing all the time. You don't have time to sort of mull over things that are angering you and upsetting. You just don't have time. You've got to think about the road.
Describe a traditional day as a HGV driver. So you turn up to your depot. Give me a couple of minutes of what that day looks like.
Well, a lot of it will depend on what kind of delivery place it is. So I've worked for a beer company. So I would turn up at the depot. The first thing you do is you check your lorry, you check your truck, and you have a whole kind of a regular list of checks that you have to make sure everything's operating, everything's in good order. There's nothing dangerous about the truck. So that's always the first thing you do. And then you basically, if it's pallet deliveries, well, for the beer company, they would load the lorry with forklifts. There I had a second man, which is your sort of co-driver, although they didn't drive, I did the driving. So we would go to each drop, unload the kegs. He would chuck and I would catch, and we would just unload at various different drops. And with pallets, I tended to be doing that on my own, because I wouldn't usually have a second man for pallet deliveries. So you'd have a pallet truck. So you'd be getting those off the tailgate of the lorry. again, just going around, always checking your time to make sure you're not going over your driver hours, because that's all quite strict, because you've got your little card and it has to go in the machine. And other things, I mean, I've driven, the most recent one I did, I was driving for a pipe supply company. So I was off to the Highlands with a load of pipes, and then somebody would be there with a forklift to take it off, and I would be helping them get it off. And it's just great because, I mean, especially in this part of the world, it's a lovely part of the world. I'm driving through it. It's and yeah, it's just delivering things that people need, and it's great.
And you get all that time on your own in the cabin looking at beautiful countryside. And if you're anything like me, you would use all that time thinking, sorting your life out, understanding what happened here, or planning for the future, or thinking about your kids. You have all that time that you would not normally have in a day because you're doing stuff.
That, yes, there's definitely an element of that. But as I say, it's not to the extent that, you know, you can. I mean, somebody said to me, are you thinking of books while you're driving along? Are you planning thoughts, planning new books? I'm thinking, well, I never really have time to do that, because if I start sort of drifting off the way I used to when I was a writer, sort of thinking, oh, these characters could do this, and like, you know, next thing you know, somebody's overtaking me, and I'm, you know, so it's good in that it's kind of calming because of having to focus and having to think about all the technical stuff. You know, watch your tail swing, you know, watch your hours, check your wing mirrors, stay off your mobile phone, and it's all that. While it's actually quite restful, because you cannot chew over things in that kind of unhealthy way that you might be doing if you were sitting at a desk, you know, constantly to go on Twitter or something, and worrying about things, and fretting about the last thing you said or did. You can't do that, but it is good. But on another level, you're right, it is calming because you're focusing on this stuff and the other stuff is going underneath, and you're sort of, yeah, you're sort of thinking, you are focusing the road, but you think, and it's great. And thinking about next weekend, I'll go and see the kids, I'll take a drive, I'll come down this way. And yeah, it's really, I like it. I kind of wish I'd started earlier, to be honest.
It sounds like you really, really enjoy it.
I really do enjoy it. I enjoy it enormously. And I like, I've never met anyone I don't like in the college industry. It's just, yeah, just everybody's really helpful. Nobody's sexist, you know? It's like, they just kind of expect you to do the job. They get on with the job. They know, like, for instance, they know that, like, if there's an enormous keg, I'm not going to be able to move it. So, right, so they don't make a fuss about that. They're just like, right, I'll throw, you catch. That's okay. You know, and I don't have to say I'm a weak and feeble woman, I can't throw the keg. He's just like, no, I'll throw when you catch. You know, because
there'll be some small weak men who can't do that either, who are driving HGVs. We always make exception for people we know are struggling to do something or not to do it. You know, we always make exception.
Yeah. If you know somebody's got a sore arm or a shoulder or something, you're going to do more of it. Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like you're really enjoying the HGV driving, which is great. But like me, what happened to you was unfair and unjust. And at some point, we both looked at what happened and went, no, I'm not having this. I need to stand up. I need to fight back. I need to do something. So you don't pick on someone else like this. I fought back and, you know, I sued one or two people. I made the board of my charity resign in disgrace, and I got my job back. But you're going through this now. Can you tell me about what you're doing now?
Right. Well, I mean, I was fairly quickly very angry. As you know, Nick, the initial thing, the first few days, is kind of the shock, there's trauma. It is a horrible experience, and you know that as well. Because having so many people hate you, even if it's for no reason, it's got to get you somewhere. So there was that shock initially, but I knew, even as it was happening, I knew I don't deserve this. This is unjust. None of them actually understand my opinions at all. They're making judgments about me when they know nothing about me. And I was very quickly coldly angry, also blinking depressed. It was like I'd alternated between kind of the absolute slough of despond and just being absolutely too angry to speak barely. But the day after it happened, I think it was the 27th of June, the day after my firing, I joined the Free Speech Union straight away because I'd heard of it. I just had the sense that the Free Speech Union would be willing to help, and they got back to me straight away. They've been absolutely brilliant. It never even occurred to me to approach the Society of Authors, which was my professional trade union, because I knew how they treated Rachel Rooney when she had all her trouble. They did nothing to defend her. They did nothing to intervene.
This is part of the problem now with our trade unions. Trade unions were set up because employers would discriminate against certain workers. 200 years ago, if you was a Catholic, you're not working here if you're a Catholic. We used to have no blacks, no dogs, no Irish in B&B windows. And the unions would fight for workers. Unions now are part of the problem. Why does it take someone like Toby Young to set up an organisation to fight for people to have free speech when that's what the trade unions were for?
Yes, and the entire kind of society, the establishment, everybody knew that free speech was a kind of bedrock of our entire world, our entire society. It's always been something we've valued and we're proud of, and suddenly it isn't. And as you say, then Toby has to set up the Free Speech Union because other people won't defend it, and that has been starting since I think it definitely was sparked around about the time of the Salman Rushdie fatwa, when some people and some institutions just failed to come out strongly enough and say, no, that's not acceptable. Don't care how offended you are,
At that time with Salman Rushdie, there was a Conservative MP on TV and said, if I knew Salman Rushdie, I'd take him down an alley and I'd teach him some manners. And it's like,
yeah, what? I mean, oh, yeah, and Shirley Williams, there was that famous appearance of Shirley Williams on Question Time, where she prevaricated and said a lot of people were very offended. And Christopher Hitchens, who was on the same panel, absolutely tore a strip off her for what she said, quite rightly. Anyway, so that was it. I did join the Free Speech Union, and boy, do we need it. And I know that a lot of other people have had to approach them because they're not getting any satisfaction from their own people who should be defending them, who should be defending their right to hold opinions and to speak and express themselves freely. So anyway, yeah, I did that. I was, they put me in touch with lawyers. It took a long time because I was in quite a state of mental distress, and I could not clarify and focus properly on legal issues. I didn't understand what people were asking of me. It was all very difficult. And also my husband had just died. He died the month before I was fired, like 5 weeks before I was fired. My husband had died. So I was also trying to look after my children and my children's emotional health and trying to support them, trying to find another income source. So that was it. But in the end, the Free Speech Union introduced me to this fantastic guy, Warren Cabral, he's got legal training himself. He's a lawyer, although he doesn't practice in this country, and he really helped me enormously. We went to an employment tribunal. I was allowed to go to the employment tribunal. It was quite a high hurdle to get over because I was late. And also I had to prove I was an employee, not just some sort of freelance independent contractor. So anyway, the first time we went to the employment tribunal, I won on the time delay. The judge found that it was understandable, that there were reasons that were justifiable why it had taken such a time because of the state of my mental health. But we lost on the point that I was an employee, but we requested permission to appeal that decision, and we've won permission to appeal that decision. So we are hoping to go ahead and try again to prove that I was effectively an employee. This was my main source of income. I relied on it completely, and I was very much under the direction of the company. It wasn't like I wasn't writing my own stuff, basically. Yeah.
No, I'm glad you took them on, because is that HarperCollins is a big publisher. You know, they'll have teams of solicitors working on this, and that's what you're up against. In my case, I was up against three friends who didn't have a solicitor. And so mine collapsed straight. No, they all collapsed straight away. But you know, if you're looking at a multinational company like that, much harder to get the result and to get him into court. So well done for even just trying, because these companies need to know they can't run roughshod over us. They may win certain cases, but at least by raising it and get it into the public arena.
Yes, that they don't just get away scot-free. I mean, this is what I remember saying this at the Battle of Ideas last year. I mean, I think there's no point trying to shame, and I'm talking generally now. I'm not talking about HarperCollins or working partners. I'm talking this generally. There's no point trying to shame an anonymous mob on Twitter. They don't have faces, they don't have names, they don't care. As you said, they don't feel shame, and that is one of those things that you mentioned that we should be feeling shame about, is tormenting, persecuting, and driving other people out of jobs. People should be ashamed of that, but they're not. And scorpions are going to scorpion. You cannot shame the shameless. But what we do need to do is we have to make companies, institutions, charities, government departments, we have to make them understand that they don't get away with this. They don't just capitulate to a mob and think that's the end of it. We did what they wanted, we're safe now. They have to understand they can't do that, which is kind of what unions should be for. But as you say, unions are so captured now by much of this stuff. I mean, that they will not defend their members who are being fired for being against, for example, the transgender ideology and the not transgender people, the activism, the ideology, the extremism. Yeah.
I mean, some of the trade unions are worse than that. It's not that they don't stick up for their members. Sometimes they're also the attack dog as well. You know, especially if you're a professor at a university. I forgot the lady's name now. Her union was also part of the problem.
Yes, that's it. Because the unions are so they. And if an employee goes against what they believe, they as an institution believe, they won't defend them, which is not what a union is supposed to be about. And it's the same with the Society of Authors, which is in a terrible state at the moment, because it's not standing up. Of all the institutions that should be standing up for freedom of thought, speech, and expression, you'd think the Society of Authors would be one, but it's not doing it.
We need some new unions out there. We need the capitalist theory that says if you're not getting a good enough service off A, someone needs to set up B.
Yeah. And a lot of these institutions, I do believe that this will not last forever. I don't believe it can, because things that are not based in reality cannot last forever.
It's all changing. The pendulum is definitely swinging back, and I think when we look at this in a decade or two, when it's all gone, I think we owe Black Lives Matter a huge favour, because they brought all this to the fore. It was all slightly wishy-washy under the carpet, but because of what they did in 2020, we've started looking at all these things now. And everyone who looks at it goes, no, don't like any of it. I think we've got a couple of more years, but almost on a weekly basis now, we're having huge victories all the time.
Yeah, and the thing with it's the sort of unholy trinity. What is it? It's critical race theory, that's the thing, and queer theory, and
gender ideology.
I've totally forgotten the third leg of it.
Gender ideology.
Gender ideology, yeah. So these are just theories, and they've just been kind of accepted by institutions as unquestionable, and people think, oh, I have to do that to be good, I have to do that to be kind, I have to do that to be liberal, and it's not necessarily true. There's very specific aspects of these ideologies that are pretty incompatible with
the Western world,
the freedoms of the society we've become used to. And we have it can't last. And because it's based in gender ideology in particular, is so based in fantasy and sheer physical unreality, is no way it can last, which is why it would be ridiculous to start establishing it in law and writing it into laws. I just hope that some of the institutions, or maybe I don't. I mean, some of the institutions have been so captured, like unions, like the Society of Authors. Are they going to be able to come back from this, or are they simply going to have to sort of dissolve and be replaced by something else, or can they be rescued from it? Because there's so much worthwhile. There's so much worthwhile in these organisations.
I think they can all be fixed fairly easily, because you can change them if you hold the purse strings. So let's look at the university sector. So if the government said to the university sector, we're never giving a student a grant for this list, gender theory, lesbian dance theory, we're never funding them, students to do them, they're not getting grants to do. You can still run these courses, but it's not going to be subsidised by the government. We're not giving grants for that. If they also said, we're going to rate you on your freedom of speech at a university, and if you don't hit a certain bar, then we don't give you your annual grant. And if you don't reach that, we're not going to give you money to do research for us. Honestly, all these institutions, we think they're woke, we think these people are believers. They're not. They're just cowards who go with the flow because that seems to be the winning direction to go in. If once you hit their money and you hit their jobs and you hit their pensions, all these people will flip very quickly. But a lot of it needs to come from government.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, probably the funding thing, I totally agree. There should definitely some sort of level and some requirement of universities to permit freedom of debate, speech, expression, thought, and that should go without saying in universities, rather than targeting the sort of funding threat at individual courses. I think that should be where the funding relies. The funding should rely on universities doing what they've always been supposed to do, which is encourage debate, thought, just kind of analysis, critical thinking. Some of the kind of wilder courses, I think, to be honest, that's just the sort of thing that's they'll fade away when people don't get jobs from them. But it's the freedom of thought and speech in universities is absolutely crucial.
They're doing themselves out of business at the moment. They're going to bankrupt themselves if they carry on the way they are. In Washington, D.C., the Judge Network in Washington, D.C. has told, I think it's Yale Law School, we're now not taking any of your students on internships for the whole district because your students have a waste of time. And that's Yale Law School.
Wow.
It's hitting the real world. And when it hits the real world, then you're gonna come face to face with reality.
Well, that's it. And that's why I do think it cannot last forever. But in the meantime, we've got, it's not something we can just wait for it to happen. We do have to, and
we all have to fight.
We do need government to say, look, if you want to run your university as a private institution for just talking about the things you want to talk about, restricting speech, restricting freedom of thought, that's fine. That's your entitlement, but you don't get government funding to help with it. You don't.
Exactly.
They have to have some sort of level of responsibility for free speech, free expression, debate, actual critical thought.
No, fantastic. So where can people find you if people want to know more about you and follow you on social media and stuff like that?
So I'm on Twitter, I'm at Gillian_Philip. I'm also on Facebook, but I'm hardly ever there, so there's not much point trying to find me on Facebook. That's about it, really. I do have a website, gillianphilip.com.
I'll stick all this in the description of the video.
not been updated for ages because life and things happening.
Are you still raising funds for your court case?
I am, yes. And
Right. If you can send me that link, I'll put that link in the description. So people need to be helping you, because it's not just you. You're fighting on behalf of everybody here.
well, that would be so helpful, Nick, and thank you so much. Because I mean, I think, and especially for and I also hope I'll be able to get rights for writers who are treated like, I mean, honestly, for the people who actually write the words that are in the books, they're paid dreadfully in comparison to the editors and the publishers, the staff. And I hope to be able to do something to improve things for them by getting some sort of employment rights. Because, yes, there are freelance writers, and I've done freelance writing, but there are also situations where the writer is very much under the control of the publisher, the packager, whatever, and frankly not being rewarded very well for it.
Yeah, because they can get away with it, and because they've got rooms full of lawyers.
Yeah.
So good luck in your continuing fight. Anything I can do, just ask. I've got my fingers crossed that we're going to get another win now that you've been able to appeal this and go back. I really do hope we get some success from your case, because I think it's just an appalling story, the way you were dropped just like that. Just absolutely appalling. Well, thanks for coming on. Lovely catching up with you again, even though it's been 13 months.
I know, right? Maybe we'll see you at the Free Speech Union next year.
Hopefully. You enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too, Nick. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.